Welcome, Juvenal. It's an honor to speak with Rome's most formidable satirist. To begin, can you tell us where and when you were born?
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. I was born somewhere between 55 and 60 CE in a little town called Aquinum. It wasn't glamorous, but it had its own strength. Stone walls, hardworking people, that kind of place. Central Italy, not too far from the pulse of the empire, but far enough that it felt a little bit forgotten. As for the exact year, well, records weren't always kept clean. Life back then didn't run on perfect calendars. What mattered more was that I was born into Rome's world, and I saw it for what it was.
Thank you. You lived and wrote during a very tense time in Roman history. Can you tell us what the political and social climate was like, and how it influenced your writing?
Yes, sure. So life under Emperor Domitian was tough. He ruled like a dictator. People were scared to speak their minds. The Senate had no real power anymore, and only those who flattered the emperor got ahead. If you had talent or integrity, you were ignored or punished. I got exiled just for criticizing how officers were promoted based on favoritism. After Domitian died, things improved a little under Nerva, Trajan, and Hadrian. But the damage was already done. Corruption was everywhere, not just in government. Rich people acted like fools trying to be Greek or show off with luxury. That's why I wrote satire. I was angry. I couldn't just laugh at what was happening. Things were too messed up for jokes. I used harsh words because someone had to tell the truth. Rome had lost its way, and satire was my way of fighting back.
There are some speculations that your family was wealthy. What was your upbringing like?
We weren't scraping by. That's true. My father had enough to see that I was educated, which in Rome counted for a lot. We weren't the sort to host senators for dinner, but we weren't begging for scraps either. I learned rhetoric, I studied philosophy, I read the laws and the poets. I noticed something. Education teaches you how to speak, not how to be heard in a world where money and power do the real talking.
And you originally pursued a military career. What drew you to the army?
I would say ambition. Plain and simple. For someone like me, born with just enough status to hope for more, the army seemed like the clearest ladder to climb. Serve well, get noticed, earn favor, maybe even a poet in the emperor's bureaucracy. That's how the game was supposed to go. I didn't go to war out of patriotism or love for the sword. I went because I thought it would get me somewhere. But Rome has a way of showing you that the ladder is often pulled up before you get your feet on the first rung.
And was your military career successful?
Success? That depends on how you define it. I followed orders, I did the job. But when promotion came around, a post I had earned, it was handed to a court favorite, a performer named Paris. Not a soldier, not a statesman, just someone the emperor liked watching on stage. That was it for me.
So your satire began as a reaction from this injustice?
I think so, yes. At first it did come from that bitter place. I felt cheated and I couldn't just swallow it.
That shield didn't protect you from exile. Can you tell us about that?
Satire has its risks, especially when the truth stings the wrong ears. One line, one verse, aimed too closely at someone with power, and suddenly I'm shipped off to Egypt, they say. Cyan specifically. It's a hard place. Hot sun, endless sand, the kind of place that makes a man wonder if he'll ever see home again. But it wasn't all ruin. Even there I kept writing. And there I started to see what mattered and what was rotten to the core.
So what was your life like after you returned to Rome?
Domitian was dead by then, so it was safe enough to come back. But exile changes you, and Rome changes too. I came back to a city that had moved on without me. I wasn't rich, I wasn't powerful. I lived on the kindness of others, which is a bitter meal to eat every day. You bow, you flatter, you smile, while inside you're rotting. But I kept writing. That became the thing that sustained me. Even when I was little, I had that voice.
And did things improve in later years?
They did, a little. The Emperor Hadrian gave me a gift, land, enough to live decently. Why? Well, who knows? Maybe he liked my work, maybe he just wanted to quiet me down. Either way, I took it. I moved to Tibber, bought a small farm, raised animals, hired a few servants. Nothing grand, nothing worthy of Roman legend, but it was peaceful. After all the noise, peace felt like wealth.
Your first satire famously asks, is it difficult not to write satire? Why do you see the world this way?
Because the world I lived in practically begged for it. Every day, some new absurdity strutted past. You see a beggar pretending to be a nobleman, a poet starving while liars feast. How do you not write satire? It wasn't even a choice anymore. It was survival. Satire became the only honest language left. Everything else had been bought or silenced.
I also had a specific question you might find interesting. You've also written historically about women in a way modern readers find excessive. How do you respond to the charge of misogyny?
Look, I get it, I do. But it wasn't about hating women. It was about hating excess, corruption, and vanity, no matter where I saw it. The women in my sixth satire are exaggerated, sure. That's what satire does. It magnifies to expose. I went after men just as fiercely. What I hated was the way Roman society praised luxury over virtue, whether it in a man or a woman. The worst traits, greed, deceit, cruelty, they weren't tied to gender. They were tied to a culture that forgot how to be Roman. The people that once bestowed commands, consulships, legions, and all else now concerned itself no more and longed eagerly for just two things, bread and circuses.
Very well put. Now, let's turn specifically to your satire 10. Would you mind reading a passage aloud in Latin and then English and giving a little context or explanation on it?
Yes, of course. Omnibus interis, quae sunt a cadivus usque, aurorum et gangen, pauci disnoscere possunt. Vera bona atque illis multum diversa, remota. Erroris nebula, quid enim ratione timemus. Aut cupimus, qui tam dextro pede concipis ut te conatus non poenieteat votice peracti. E verte domos sotas optantibus ipsis, di faciles, noctura toga noccitura petuntur. Militia, torrens dicendi copia multis, et sua mortifera est facundia. So now I'll translate it in English for the audience. From the plains of the Indus to the countryside of the Tagus, few men, dispelling the cloud of error, know how to discern real goods from the true evils. Few know how to desire, how to fear properly. What desires indeed, in our vague whims, what projects do we form under rather good auspices, to not soon see with bitter regret our efforts and our wishes crowned with success. The gods, in granting imprudent prayers, often have overthrown entire families. Often we have owed only to our own wishes, and our evils in war, and our evils in peace. One, a sublime orator, thunders against crime, and of his eloquence he becomes the victim. Another believes everything is possible with the muscles of his arm, and in his very muscles he finds death. Now here's the point I was making. No matter where people live, whether in the West or way out east, they all make the same mistake. They want the wrong things. We think wealth, fame, political power, great strength will make us happy. But often those things ruin us. We pray for them, chase them, and when we finally get them, we regret it. I even say, when the gods, when they say yes too easily to our prayers, can destroy entire families. Evertere domos totas obtantibus ipsis, di facilis. We get what we wanted, and it turns out to be a curse. The big idea here is that people don't know what's actually good for them. We keep wishing for things that look shiny on the outside but are empty, or worse, destructive on the inside. That's the kind of foolishness I was trying to expose.
That's a great explanation. I'm sure our listeners will learn from that. It was great hearing from you, Juvenal.
I'm honored. Thank you for having me, and always remember, sit mens sana in corpore sano.